Hello everybody and welcome to this somewhat unusual unboxing. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Heroes of Normandie by Devil Pig Games, and I'm in here because I want a bit of room to spread out to show you what's going on. So this is a strategy game based on World War II for 2 or more players. There is a solo mode, but it requires a separate expansion, so core set 2 or more. And it allows you to play out a light strategy game with a sort of a Hollywood feel. So if you think the likes of Kelly's Heroes, The Bulge, that sort of 70s, 60s period of films, you'll get a good idea. You'll see people creeping in here like the Dirty Dozen-esque sort of commander, Lee Marvin, and that's also representative on the tiles and the components. Now, while it is that sort of Hollywood feel to the gameplay, the game itself is very solid and also has options that you can play it more historically accurately if you wish, and you can sort of go from there. So I'm going to show you a very quick setup and then take you through some of the components that you can get in here. So as you can see, I have a 2-board map set out. I've put on some additional terrain, which you get in there. So the core game itself comes with 6 tiles, and the tiles themselves are double-sided. Scenarios will specify which tile you should be using and where the terrain goes, as well as the orientation. However, you also have the option to design your own scenarios as well with this. It is a very flexible system. So on this engagement encounter, if you will, we've set up some Americans on one side and some Germans on the other. Now, the first thing we'll take a look at is the, I suppose, the army construction is a good way of saying it. If you take a look at this, the scenario will specify what you're using, but you can change these out if you decide to build something more bespoke, or if you want to be historically accurate, if you want to try and build the order of battle for a specific thing. But this is what you'll generally start off with. So here we have the 1st Infantry Division, 16th Infantry Regiment A. So you can see here there are 4 sections that have got color-coded tokens in there for the big red one, but nothing else. But in the center here we have a little setup for the rifle platoon. So we have a lieutenant, a recon, a support team, and a fire team. Down below we also have a points value. So if you do decide to design your own scenarios or play a free-form game like a strategic war game, you can assign a points value to build the list towards. And then here we also have the break point. So if 3 of these 4 are destroyed, then you've reached your break point for this particular division. If I quickly bring in the Germans and show you some of the options that are available. So here you can see it's a Panzer Grenadier, 2nd Battalion of the 304th 2nd Panzer Division. And again, recon, fire group, and an officer. And again, points value and break point. So very similar so far. But up here you can see that there are 2 large and 2 small tokens, and these have got a ribbon running through them. So here the ribbon is sort of brown and cream. Here it's a grey with a black stripe in the middle, grey with a black stripe, and on this one it's both. And this is where the sort of army construction comes in, because you can get various things. So for example, if I wanted to use a Lux in an engagement, I would pop that out and pop that in. And as long as one of the colors on the band match, then you can construct it. It's legal for army construction. If I wanted to bring in a Panzer Grenadier unit, which is a MG42, a fire team, and a recon group, then it could go in here or here, dealer's choice. Or if I want to bring in some half tracks, so SDKFZ 251/1s, again, it could go into either because it has that dual band color on it. The smaller ones are actually unit upgrades. So if I wanted to use planning, I can't here. The ribbon does not match either of the ribbon upgrades. I need to have a high command to get an extra order token. We'll get onto orders shortly. But if the ribbon did match, it could go in there. As it is for my single Panzer Grenadier regiment, I can't. But what I could do is replace one of these with a little Zundap, a little Kratschützen motorcycle and sidecar recon platoon. So I could pop that out, pop him in along with my half-tracks, and for the princely sum of 85 additional points, I've got a more mobile force. And that is essentially list building in a nutshell. If you want to be more historically accurate, there are certain specifications within the scenario book where it tells you must have a certain amount of command, infantry and the like before you can start building out from there. But within the simpler constraints of just putting together your own force for a scenario, they have just those ribbons and a points value to aim towards. So very simple, very easily done. Now, when you're playing the game, there are several phases within it. You have the initial initiative phase and also the sort of allocation of resources. Then you have your action phase where people carry out the actions, and then you have a support phase. If we go back to our map, you'll see I've already skipped one, but we'll talk about this briefly. So initiative will either be suggested by the scenario, or you can roll off or dice off for it. And then once somebody has the initiative, it flips back and forward. So it's always going to alternate between people unless something is played like a support card that changes that. Once you have your initiative, you'll then work out your order tokens that you're going to have available for you. So if we look here, I get 2 order tokens for my officer. There is a supplemental one here available if this slot is unlocked. So by building into here, actually, I'm not getting anything. So what you need to do is actually have it in here, and this will give you an additional order when you come to sort out your faction in the initiative phase. So the person chooses how they deploy their objectives, their orders, and then the orders go sequentially, and you go from 1 to 10, depending on how many orders you have available. Bluffs don't count for anything, they're just there to throw your opponent off. And then you also have heroic moments, heroic actions, where if you have one available, they can be used as any number. They can even be the number 0. So even if you don't have initiative, but you've got a heroic objective or heroic action to use, it can be dropped in first and you get that bit of activation. So if we look at the board, if I start off with the 1s, so if the Americans have the objective, they would nominate or would reveal that this is number 1, and he would then get to move. On his card, it tells me he moves 4, but he's also vehicle. Vehicles move slightly differently from infantry in that they have to pay for 45-degree turns. So he would move 1, possibly 2, 3 to go to 45. And then if this terrain wasn't in the way, he could drive across it. But as it is, he'd have to turn again for his 4th. You can leave vehicles sitting at a 45-degree angle. So I can sit there and be in a position where I can cover lines of fire between these sort of trees and the like. So you're not restricted to the squares, even though on first blush, on first glance, when you're looking at it, it looks like it's squares fitting within squares. Everything should be neatly fit within a 90-degree angle. So once you've done a move, that's the turnover. You can also declare that you're going to do a fire or an assault action, depending on range, but we needed to get the tank out where he needed to be. Flipping over to the Germans, I would reveal that this fire team is actually my first group. So he could shoot here at the heavy vehicles, so at the Sherman. However, according to his tile, he can't actually do any damage to it. So with that in mind, he'd have to either decide to sit there or potentially move up and get in a better position for next turn. So this has a move of 3, and you can move anywhere orthogonally or diagonally around you unless something stops you. So between these two tiles there's a little no entry sign, so you can't move diagonally between these. Also on these bocage hedgerows, they also have the no entry, but in this case it means you can't pass through, so your move will take you into but not through and out of. So I could potentially go 1, 2, 3 and then my turn there. You'd move on then to the 2s. Have a little 2 there. And in this instance, my 30 cal is going to attempt to take a shot at the Germans. So the fire team has moved in. On the bottom of the cards, or on the bottom of the tokens, I should say, it gives you all the information you need to work out what you're doing. So the blue arrow tells you how far things can move. So this can move 1. In the middle here we have the shield with the target number for people to hit it. So a 5 or a 6 on a d6. And then around that shield we have its target number against infantry. So gold shield, gold infantry. Up top is purple for light vehicles, and then silver for heavy vehicles like the Sherman or Panthers or Panzers. In this case, the 30 cal can't hurt heavy vehicles, but they can hurt light and they can hurt infantry. They get a +3 to damage infantry, in fact. So if I look at my team, normally they have a 4 in defense. However, they're in cover, which gives +2 to infantry, nothing to anybody else. So that pushes that forward to a 6 for defense. However, the +3 on the die means I only need a 3, 4, 5 or 6 to actually do any damage. And you would just roll and then compare results. So 2 + 3 is 5, doesn't reach the target number. If it had reached the target number, infantry tiles will be set up that once you reach the number and deal damage, there's either a little symbol here, the skull and flip, in which case you would flip it over and you would have a reduced fire team where you see if you take another hit, you're actually killed. But it also changes the stats, so they're less effective at firing against infantry and light, but their defense goes up as there's less of them to hit. If we compare that to the 30 cal team that actually attacked them, you'll see a single hit will kill it. It does have a flip symbol, but the flip symbol is actually a way to deploy it. So while they're not deployed, they get to move 3, they get no bonuses to shooting, although they still can shoot from the hip. But if you get them in position and then deploy them, those bonuses go through the roof. However, being a small team, harder to hit, but when you do hit them, they'll be killed immediately. So that's a nice little feature. I like the fact that things like the infantry support weapons have to actually be deployed. You can't just run around with them constantly fired from the hip, and you do get benefits when you do deploy. We've moved all our 1s, we've moved all our 2s. If we go back to the sort of tabletop, the American has 1 left, but it's actually a bluff. The Germans still have a 2 and a 3, and also a bluff over here with this one. So we would then complete the moves. When all the moves are completed, this is the action phase resolved. And the action phase is what it sounds like, action-based. The Americans obviously have stuff they haven't moved. Likewise, the Germans have several units they haven't moved. And the interesting thing about your command is you're not going to have all the command points to do everything you want to do all the time. The bluff is there to disorientate your opponent and not let him know exactly what your objectives are. But an interesting feature of this game is when you take the bluffs off after the action phase, anybody who doesn't have a numbered marker on them, so we have 1, 2, and 3, 1 and 2, this leaves several units per side, they can now make what's called a support move in the support phase, and it allows them to reposition. So while you may not be in a valid position to attack, it stops units from being left behind simply because you don't have enough orders. So these could then move up and do whatever relevant things they need to do to help protect you and to do your next objective along the map. So that's more or less the basic sort of structure of how the game plays. You have your commands, you issue your orders, the orders then are resolved back and forth, and then you resupply, and that supply brings units from the back. It also allows you to bring in other things like cards. So the cards are dealt out depending on the amount of people playing. So normally you'll have like a hand of 6, and they're replenished at the end of the resupply phase. So at the end of the turn, you're going to get new cards in. So really you want to be burning through these as quickly as possible. And it gives you things like, thank you helmet. So play when one of your infantry units suffers a hit and would be destroyed by a firing action. Ignore it and instead place a suppression on it. It can't be used during an assault, but it can stop your 30 cal fire team from being killed. So all of a sudden, instead of being killed off, they're suppressed. They've got some negatives to their dice rolls for modifiers, but you've got a chance to remove that suppression, and it means they stay on the table a bit longer. And there's a whole host of these support cards that are available for both factions. As you can see, these actually come with cute little backs on them. So the standard game, they are linen-based cards. So nice finish. However, you can buy deck protector and a carrying deck case for them, just to keep them out of the way. So both factions have a 50 card deck to begin with, and an interesting innovation and changes to the gameplay can be had by these support cards. So that's the basic World War II Big Red 1 core set. We'll call that the basics for it. It comes with a set of 2 platoons or battalions for both sides, plus high command and support. So you have things like mortars, artillery packs, Shermans, Wolverines, Panthers, things like that. There's a whole host of variety in there, along with the various terrain tiles and terrain elements you need to play out your game. If I just shuffle my board forward, out of the way, take a look at the 2 books. So first off, we have the rulebook itself. The rulebook is 35 pages, so not particularly egregious, and broken down step by step. As you can see, it's fairly comprehensive, explaining the various symbols on all of the cards. And when you look at some of the cards, they look quite busy until you understand that it's a relatively simple set of symbols on there that repeat throughout. So you're always going to have your defense plus your bonus to hit opposing units. For the light tanks, it's the same, or the light armor. For the heavy vehicles, they sometimes will have multiple weapons. So they'll list the 2 weapon options on both sides because you have a primary and a secondary that you can fire. And the rules explain in a fairly comprehensive way how to go about playing your games. If we look then at the scenario book for the big red one, there are a set of scenarios that are also broken down into campaigns, and it also gives you rules for playing multiple or multiplayer games, which can either be 2 sides allied, a 2 versus 1, or a 3 versus 1. It also explains things like the little turn tracker. So when you're setting up, as you can see here, you set where the end is going to be depending on the scenario. So you can have variable scenario lengths. You can also have triggers. So at certain times, something may happen, like an air supply drop or reinforcements arriving for the Americans. So you know these things are coming and you can track them as you're playing through the game. Then the scenarios themselves. After that, it goes through and you get a comprehensive breakdown for your scenario. So you start with the title of the scenario in particular, so something like Plain Carnage, the board setup, the units that you're going to be using, and then also your triggers and end game. And it also gives you a potted history of what this particular scenario is representing. So why has High Command ordered us to hold this lousy spec way out in the middle of nowhere? I feel you. So specific ones will be based on actual historical events. So it's not, even though it has that Hollywood feel, it's not just a generic World War II game. Obviously, by having the full-sized boards out, you've got something equivalent to a 3x2 board, because they're roughly 30 centimeters or 12 inches per side. You can see there, the core set has 27 pages, and at the rear we also have the tracker if you're going to be playing through the actual campaign scenarios, and you can keep track of who's doing what, and it tells you what games to play in what order and who gets the victory points for it and any other modifiers that need to be made. So that is roughly what you're looking at for the Big Red 1 core set. However, there are a lot of expansions. First thing we'll start off with, I've already mentioned deck protectors. There are also things like this, which is the core box storage set. So if you don't want to have all your tokens in little Ziploc bags, you can get this. And as you can see, you also get a set of stickers, so you can stick them on the front of the tray to see who has what. They also very handily have little holes at the back. So if I want to pick out just my American High Command, I can pop that there, pull out the little case, and then inside I have all my relevant tokens specifically for the High Command. So Cullen hedge cutters and then the tiles that are required for that. And there's also things like the big game element box. I've not fully explored this yet because I've not played through a complete game. So I imagine at some point I'll start to separate out these tokens a bit more. At the moment, they're roughly split into American and German and vehicles for vehicle damage up here. But those are a nice little thing for sort of quality of life. So you can neatly store your game paraphernalia away. And afterwards, it's all tucked back in. But I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, tiles. What do I do with all my tiles? Because if it's all in there, I've still got a big core box. Well, this is one of the expansions. Bloody Omaha. So if I pop this here, oh, and it weighs a ton, you can see this is the battleground storage box. So once all of the other tiles have been taken out of this and all the counters, I can then go ahead and use this to store my actual game boards. Again, there's another set of stickers for the various units that are available in here. So we've got more for the Big Red 1, more High Command, 304th, and some new mechanized and Rangers for the US. And if we have a look, you can see the token sheets in here. I'd say the tokens are around 2 mil thick, as are the game boards. Nicely printed and well cut as well. So when you're playing through, you're not going to have to worry about taking chunks out of the actual tokens when you come to punch them out of the sheets. After that, we have our landing craft and some destroyed roads and I suppose seawalls as well, along with some beach defences. No, that one just fell out. More seawalls, along with some objectives. And then here we have a whole host of American vehicles, so more Shermans, Fireflies, M10s, more half-tracks, and again, additional tokens and the dashboards for building your force. And that is the last of our token sheets. So there's the Germans for defending, including some nice little stummels and additional half-tracks. So 250s, /1 and /9, so reconnaissance. This set also comes with 6 tiles, and again, double-sided. So you can have your beach landing with things like Czech hedgehogs, some Rommel's asparagus, and then flowing into the more verdant land of the scrubland on the way into bocage country. You can see some poor villagers' crops about to be absolutely rubbered. And then some beach defences, so large bunker complex, practically impenetrable on the sides. And another additional beach wall defence. Some wreckage. And another massive bunker. So when you combine things like Bloody Omaha with the Heroes of Normandie core set, the big red one, you've got beach landing campaign followed by the progress into bocage country, into France itself. You can start to sort of layer things on. They've also done smaller expansions, things like Hell's Fury, which is a little pastiche of Brad Pitt and Fury. So you can get a Fury Sherman. Likewise, there are other people. So Oddball is kicking around in the core set for the Heroes of Normandy. And those are little characters that can be generic, or you can give them upgrades in the same way that you can have those upgrades available on your divisional commanders. So it's a very comprehensive set. I haven't had a chance to play through full game yet. I've just been toying around with the rules. But as far as a light strategy game goes, for people who are interested in World War II, but without wanting to sort of dive into all the minutiae, it's a very easy way to do it. While the rules are light to learn, there's a lot in there. There's plenty of depth. So if you just want to play the scenarios through as standard, you can definitely do that. If you want to get a bit more involved and then start planning out your actual missions, or going back and revisiting old scenarios with your own lists, then the options are all there. There's a lot to explore within it. So it's certainly not something that's going to be rushed through and finish the core set in a couple of days and then be left going, well, what do I do now? Apart from expanding it, you can go back and you can start playing essentially a war game, a strategic war game on the tabletop. You can set a points value, 400 points, 600 points. You and your friend can delve in there and start to do some list building, set up your own scenarios, set up your own tabletops, and then populate them with whatever terrain that you have in there, whether it's the ruined houses in the bocage country, or if you want to start looking at some of the other pieces. But there's a lot in there to explore with Heroes of Normandy, and I definitely think it's worth a look. So let me know what you think below, folks. If you've played Heroes of Normandy, want to give us any feedback, please do. If there's anything I should be looking out for, let me know that as well, because I'm really keen to get this on the table, possibly against John in the not too distant future. But let me know what you think below. Bye-bye.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.